If you're over 60, there's a quiet, comfortable habit that can shrink your retirement funds while you sleep. No market crash, no scam, no big purchase, just a familiar routine that feels safe. You go to bed feeling secure, and by morning, your money has worked all night for your bank, not for you. As a wealth advisor, I've watched nest eggs erode not from wild risks or bad timing, but from one everyday behavior that siphons purchasing power, steals yield, and delays growth day after day. It's not speculation. It's not day trading. It's something most retirees were taught to do to be responsible. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous. Today, I'm going to walk you through 9 common habits that can quietly drain a retirement, through fees you don't see, interest you don't earn, taxes you don't need to pay, and cash drag that compounds in the wrong direction. If you've ever wondered whether your careful routines might be holding you back, you need to hear this. It might just add years of income back to your plan. Before we dive in, if you haven't subscribed yet, hit that button and turn on the bell so you never miss a tip made for retirees and near-retirees. 1. Sleeping cash, leaving large balances in non-interest accounts. You've been told your whole life to keep money in the bank. And you should, up to a point. But after 60, the math changes. Inflation is not theoretical anymore. It shows up in your grocery cart and your utility bill. Meanwhile, many seniors keep 5, 6, even 12 months of expenses in old checking accounts paying nothing. That rainy day cash becomes every night erosion. While you sleep, your dollars are quietly worth less tomorrow, and the bank is earning on your deposits, not you. Let me explain this clearly. There are only 3 places your cash can sit overnight: a non-interest checking account, a low-yield savings account, or a yield-bearing vehicle. Think insured high-yield savings, treasury bills, brokered CDs, money market funds connected to your brokerage. The spread between those options can be the difference between compounding for you or compounding against you. Most retirees don't see the spread. They only feel it years later when withdrawals start pinching. I'll never forget Mr. and Mrs. Calhoun, 72 and 69, retired teachers from Arizona. Conservative, careful, always paid cash, never carried debt. When we met, they had $146,000 sitting in a legacy checking account from the 1990s. We like to see it, they told me. It made them feel secure. They weren't reckless, just proud of their discipline. But their account paid 0.01%. They also kept just 3 months in savings at 0.4% because that's what their branch recommended years ago. Meanwhile, they were withdrawing $3,200 a month from their IRA to cover expenses, taxable withdrawals, while $146,000 of idle cash earned almost nothing. What happened next wasn't a crash. It was math. Their purchasing power slipped. Their IRA distributions crept up each year to keep pace. Their tax bracket nudged higher. And the safe cash drained their plan in slow motion. Lost interest they could have earned, extra taxes from withdrawals they didn't need to make yet, and inflation silently widening the gap. No headline. No alarm. Just a leak. Here's the part that most retirees are never told. Security comes from liquidity and yield together, not from visibility alone. You don't need your entire emergency fund in a non-interest checking account to be safe. You need a tiered cash system, accessible, insured where appropriate, and yielding something real. If you're over 60, here's what I tell my clients. Keep 4 to 8 weeks of expenses in checking, your bill pay runway. That's your friction-free cash, and it's fine if it earns little. Keep the next 3 to 9 months in a high-yield savings or an insured cash sweep that actually pays. If your bank can't provide that, your brokerage probably can. Keep months 10 to 18 in short-duration vehicles you can break without penalty when needed, treasury bills laddered by month, or brokered CDs staged quarterly. That's still cash, just organized to work for you. Link everything so money moves in 1 business day, not 7. The goal is never to lock funds you truly need, but to stop gifting your yield to the bank. Timing matters too. Many retirees sweep IRA withdrawals into checking weeks before they're spent. That money sits, taxable already, doing nothing. Instead, time distributions closer to when the bill actually hits, and let the dollars earn until the last responsible moment. Your future self will thank you for those extra days of yield, month after month. And please, watch the hidden frictions. Some accounts pay teaser rates that evaporate after a few months. Others cap balances that earn the headline yield. And some charge transfer limits or delay funds over weekends, when 3 days of nothing can become 150 days of nothing across a year. Your cash should be on your team, not on the bank's balance sheet as a profit center. The CalHounds didn't need a miracle. We built a 3-tier cash ladder, linked their checking to a brokerage sweep, moved the surplus checking balance into insured, higher yield options, and rescheduled IRA withdrawals to the second business day before their bills posted. No riskier assets. No stock picks. Just better plumbing. 12 months later, their sleeping cash generated enough interest to cover 2 months of groceries. Their IRA withdrawals decreased because the cash pile, finally earning, carried part of the load. Nothing flashy, just quiet improvement, the same way it had quietly eroded before. Because here's the truth. Retirement isn't about finding the next hot investment. It's about stopping the slow leaks. The strongest compounding in retirement is often the compounding of not losing to frictions you can control. Fees, taxes, and yes, idle cash. If this surprised you, wait until you hear about the second habit. It looks just as responsible on the surface, and it drains wealth every night you carry it, paying only the minimums on safe installment plans and letting interest compound against you while you sleep. In the next part, I'll show you how even small balances at low rates can cost a retiree more than a market correction, because the interest clock never stops. If you're still watching and finding these insights helpful, comment 1 below so I know you're with me. And if you want me to review your cash tiers live in a future video, drop Cash Map in the comments. We'll keep going with part 2 next. Every retiree I've ever worked with has said some version of this: I don't carry debt, except a little here and there. It feels harmless. A balance on a furniture plan, a dental bill spread over 24 months, maybe a low-interest car loan you kept because the rate was good. But here's the hard truth. Every dollar you owe works against you every night you sleep. Interest never rests. It compounds quietly, and for seniors, it can shrink retirement funds faster than any market dip, because it's guaranteed, and it's guaranteed against you. I call this the minimum payment trap. You've probably seen it. $4,800 balance, $68 minimum due, interest rate 5.9%. That looks manageable. You pay it, feel responsible, and check it off your list. But while you're congratulating yourself for keeping up, the interest meter is still running. Every month you carry that balance, your wealth is compounding in reverse. And because retirement income is usually fixed, those reverse compounding dollars are coming out of your lifestyle, your travel, or your ability to gift money to family, not just out of some invisible surplus. Let me tell you about Mr. Henry Delgado, 74, from Florida. Retired contractor, proud grandfather, careful saver. When we met, Henry had no bad debt, no credit cards, no payday loans. What he did have was a $6,500 furniture loan at 4.9% for a living room set, a $3,800 dental plan at 6.5% interest, and $11,000 left on his car at 2.99%. To him, these felt safe. My banker said anything under 5% is good debt, he told me. Meanwhile, Henry had $52,000 sitting in a savings account earning 0.5%. That's right, his money was earning 0.5% while his low-rate balances were costing him anywhere from 3 to 6%. Let's do the math. Every month, Henry's savings earned about $21. His debts cost him $87 in interest. That's a $66 monthly drain, or nearly $800 a year, simply from letting the balances coexist. It's not just a cash flow issue. It's a psychological trap. He thought he was safe because nothing was urgent. No one was calling him, no late fees, no red ink. But the leak was there, constant and invisible. Over 5 years, that safe debt would quietly cost him over $4,000. $4,000 is a vacation. $4,000 is braces for a grandchild. $4,000 is independence, slipped away, dollar by dollar, while he slept. Here's the part most retirees never hear. Minimum payments are designed to stretch loans as long as possible. They're not about what's affordable for you. They're about what's profitable for the lender. That means the structure itself is tilted against you, and the longer you play along, the more wealth you transfer out of your pocket. Some will say, but I want liquidity, I don't want to drain my savings to pay debt. That's the illusion. Liquidity is meaningless if the liquid pool is evaporating faster than it grows. What matters is net position, and if your net position shrinks because debt is costing more than savings is earning, you're not liquid, you're leaking. So what should you do if you're over 60? First, line up your debts and list the interest rates next to your current savings yield. If the debt rate is higher than the yield, pay it down. That's guaranteed return. It's the safest investment you can make. Think of it this way. Every dollar you put toward a 6% loan is like earning 6% risk-free. Show me a bank account offering that to retirees. It doesn't exist. Second, avoid the installment trap where the low monthly payment feels affordable. Affordability is not the goal. Freedom is. The less debt you carry into your 70s and 80s, the more stable and predictable your plan becomes. Debt and fixed income don't mix well. One reduces flexibility, the other depends on it. Third, beware of zero-interest promos. They're only zero if paid in full before the teaser ends. One late payment, one day over the term, and the deferred interest often snaps back retroactively, costing hundreds or thousands. I've seen retirees lose 2 years of yield in one penalty cycle because they assumed zero meant forever. Henry's solution wasn't complicated. We reallocated $21,000 of his idle savings to wipe out both the furniture and dental balances immediately. That freed up $147 a month in payments. We then set up a structured payoff for the car, 3 additional lump sums from his savings spread across 12 months to eliminate it. At the end of 1 year, Henry had no debt, still had $30,000 in liquid savings, and was saving $230 a month in outgoing payments. His return on that debt elimination? Nearly 7%, guaranteed, tax-free, and risk-free. He called it the easiest investment he ever made. And here's what changed in Henry's life. He stopped feeling anxious about his checking account balance. He stopped transferring money mid-month to cover payments. He started planning a family reunion trip he thought was impossible. All because he realized the smallest balances can silently shrink a retirement faster than a market downturn. If you're watching this and thinking, "But my rate is low, it's fine," pause. Ask yourself, is my rate lower than what I can earn guaranteed right now, today? If not, then your money is moving backward, not forward. And that gap is costing you, not just interest dollars, but opportunity, peace of mind, and choices in retirement. Because the truth is this, wealth preservation is not about chasing high returns. It's about plugging the holes where guaranteed losses are happening every night. You can't control the stock market. You can't control the federal. But you can control whether your dollars are compounding for you or against you. And if installment debt surprised you, wait until you see the third habit. It looks disciplined on the surface, like you're being responsible with your investments, but underneath, it quietly transfers thousands in hidden fees out of your account year after year. In the next part, I'll reveal how set it and forget it funds can turn into silent wealth eroders, and what you can do to stop paying for performance you never receive. If you're still with me and finding this valuable, comment 1 below so I know you're here. And if you've ever fallen into the minimum payment trap, type minimum in the comments. I want to know how common this really is. We'll continue with part 3 in the next section. ChatGPT said, "There's a habit I see over and over again among retirees who consider themselves careful investors. They set their money into a fund recommended years ago, check their statements a few times a year, and feel relieved that it's taken care of. No active trading, no speculation, no stress. On the surface, that looks responsible. But beneath it, something quiet is happening. Fees are draining their accounts day after day. Not in a way you notice on a single monthly statement, but in a way that compounds across years, leaving you with tens of thousands less in retirement than you thought you'd have. This is what I call the silent fee bleed. It happens when retirees leave their money in mutual funds, target date funds, or managed accounts with expense ratios and hidden costs they never read about. 0.5% here, 1% there, those numbers look small. But in retirement, when portfolios are meant to sustain income, those little percentages are dollars taken directly out of your grocery money, your travel budget, or your legacy to family. They don't show up as a line item marked fee. They're embedded in the net returns. And unless you know where to look, you'll never see the erosion happening in real time. Let me share the story of Mrs. Elaine Brooks, 71, from Wisconsin. Elaine was proud of her diligence. She had worked as a nurse for 40 years and always contributed to her retirement plan. When she retired, her employer automatically rolled her into a Target Date 2015 mutual fund. Elaine thought, "Perfect. It's built for my retirement year. They'll manage the risk for me." And so she left it untouched. When Elaine came to me for a review, she had $520,000 in that fund. Not bad at all. But as I dug into the details, I saw the expense ratio was 1.08%. That's just the management fee. Add in transaction costs, turnover drag, and hidden layers, and the total cost of ownership was closer to 1.35%. On $520,000, that meant she was paying almost $7,000 every single year just for the privilege of sitting in that fund. That's $583 a month in fees, more than her utility bill, more than her car insurance, more than her grocery spend some months. And here's the kicker, she had no idea. Elaine thought she was paying nothing because she never wrote a check. She assumed the fund was included in her retirement plan. That's how the industry works. The costs are embedded, quiet, and invisible unless you know how to decode the statements. Over 10 years, if her balance remained the same, Elaine would transfer $70,000 of her retirement to the fund company, not counting any lost compounding on that money. That's a luxury car. That's a grandchild's college fund. That's years of comfortable living. Here's the part most seniors don't realize. In today's world, you don't need to pay those fees. There are index funds, ETFs, and managed portfolios with expense ratios as low as 0.03%. That's 30 cents per $1,000 invested. Compare that to $10.80 per $1,000 in Elaine's fund. The gap is enormous. And the performance? Most actively managed funds don't beat the simple indexes over time. That means Elaine was paying 10 times more for results she could have gotten nearly free. This isn't about telling everyone to abandon professional management. Some retirees need guidance, and that has value. But you should know exactly what you're paying, what you're getting, and whether the cost is justified. In retirement, where every dollar has to stretch, a 1% annual drag can mean running out of money 5 years sooner. If you're over 60, here's what I recommend. Step 1. Pull your most recent account statement and find the words expense ratio. If you don't see it, look up the ticker symbol of your fund online. Write that number down. Step 2. Multiply your current balance by that percentage. That's what you're paying each year. If you have $400,000 in a fund with a 0.9% expense ratio, you're paying $3,600 annually. Ask yourself, would I write a check for $3,600 every January for this service? If not, then why are you letting it happen invisibly? Step 3. Compare with alternatives. Broad market index ETFs charge almost nothing and historically perform better than the majority of actively managed funds. For many retirees, simply reallocating into low-cost vehicles is enough to save thousands a year without changing the overall risk profile. Step 4. If you do value advice, pay for advice directly. Many fiduciary planners will charge a flat fee or hourly rate to build and review your plan. That's transparent, predictable, and often far less expensive than embedded fees year after year. Elaine's solution was simple. We moved her money from the high-cost target date fund into a blend of index ETFs with an average expense ratio of 0.05%. Her annual cost dropped from nearly $7,000 to about $260. That's a $6,700 annual raise in retirement income without lifting a finger. Over 10 years, that's $67,000 staying in her account instead of going out. The result? Elaine didn't have to cut back on her lifestyle. She didn't have to take more risk. She simply stopped paying for performance that wasn't there. She redirected the money toward her grandchildren's education savings and still had more left over for travel. She told me, "I had no idea something so small could be so big." And that's the truth. Retirement wealth isn't just built by market gains. It's protected by stopping the quiet drains. The industry thrives on the fact that retirees don't read the fine print, don't run the numbers, and assume everything is included. But every 0.1% matters. Every fee compounds. And every dollar lost to fees is a dollar you'll never spend on your own terms. So if this shocked you, Wait until you hear about the fourth habit. It doesn't involve Wall Street at all, it involves Washington. Taxes. Many retirees follow the exact withdrawal patterns their advisors or accountants set up decades ago, never realizing those patterns can quietly push them into higher brackets, trigger Medicare surcharges, and cost tens of thousands more than necessary. In the next part, I'll reveal how poor withdrawal sequencing shrinks retirement funds faster than any fee, and how to reverse it before it's too late. If you're still here and finding this valuable, comment 1 below so I know you're watching closely. And if you've discovered a hidden fee in your own statement, type fees in the comments. I want to see how widespread this problem really is. We'll move to part 4 next. Taxes. Most retirees think of them once a year, in April, when they file. They gather their 1099s, their IRA distributions, their Social Security slips, and hand them to a preparer. The bill comes, they pay it, and they move on. But what most never realize is that taxes in retirement are not just annual, they're daily. The way you sequence withdrawals, the order in which you touch accounts, even the time of year you take distributions, can quietly add up to thousands lost. It's not the tax you see that does the most damage. It's the tax you don't see, triggered by a chain reaction of choices that seemed harmless at the time. I call this the tax cascade. It starts when a retiree takes money from the wrong bucket first. Pull from a traditional IRA when you could have used taxable accounts? You may bump your income higher than necessary. That higher income doesn't just mean a bigger tax bill. It can trigger Medicare surcharges, reduce the non-taxable portion of your Social Security, and even push you into a bracket where your long-term capital gains lose their favorable treatment. One small decision snowballs into a larger erosion. And because it feels routine, most retirees never question it until it's too late. Let me give you an example. Meet Susan, 68, retired librarian from Ohio. She had $750,000 across 3 buckets: $400,000 in a traditional IRA, $200,000 in a taxable brokerage, and $150,000 in a Roth IRA. Every year, Susan's advisor told her, "Take from the IRA, it's the biggest, and you'll have to take RMDs anyway." So she did. She withdrew $40,000 annually from her IRA, plus her $24,000 in Social Security. That gave her $64,000 gross income. Here's what she didn't realize. By doing that, 85% of her Social Security became taxable. That bumped her adjusted gross income higher than it needed to be. Higher income pushed her Medicare premiums up by nearly $80 a month, almost $1,000 a year. Her effective tax rate was higher than necessary. And because of the sequence, her taxable brokerage, where she could have harvested gains at 0% capital gains rates, just sat there, unrealized. Over 10 years, Susan quietly overpaid by about $65,000 in combined taxes and surcharges. All because of withdrawal order. The solution wasn't complicated. We built a blended strategy. Instead of taking $40,000 all from the IRA, we pulled $15,000 from taxable, $15,000 from IRA, and $10,000 from Roth. That mix kept her taxable income below the Social Security threshold, preserved more of her benefit tax-free, and avoided triggering Medicare surcharges. Her net after-tax income was the same, but her taxes dropped by $6,400 in year 1 alone. Multiply that over 20 years, and the difference is life-changing. Here's the part few retirees understand. Retirement is the one time in your life when you actually control your tax bracket. During your working years, you had a paycheck. You couldn't change the amount. But now, every withdrawal is a choice. You decide which bucket to tap, when, and how much. And every choice affects not just this year's return, but the compounding of your future balances. So what should you do if you're over 60? Start by mapping your accounts into 3 buckets: tax-deferred, IRAs, 401(k)s, taxable, brokerage accounts, CDs, savings, and tax-free, Roths, certain life insurance cash values. Next, run a projection, not just of this year, but of the next 10 to 20 years. Look at where required minimum distributions will hit. Look at when Social Security phases in. Look at how capital gains might be realized. The goal is not to minimize taxes in 1 year, it's to minimize them across your lifetime. For many retirees, the smartest move is to fill the bracket. That means deliberately taking more from the IRA early, before RMD age, but only up to the top of your current bracket. This lets you convert dollars to Roth or taxable at lower rates now, avoiding being forced into higher brackets later. It also reduces future RMDs, which can spike income and create that tax cascade. Another powerful tool: strategic Roth conversions. By converting in your 60s, before RMDs and before Social Security, you control the timing and often pay tax at lower marginal rates than you would in your 70s or 80s. And don't forget the timing within the year. Many retirees take large IRA withdrawals in January to get it out of the way. That raises their annual income early, guarantees more Social Security taxation, and can push quarterly estimates higher. By staging withdrawals later, or blending across months, you may avoid those spikes entirely. Susan's reaction when she saw the projections was disbelief. "You mean I could keep the same income and pay thousands less, just by changing the order?" Exactly. The math doesn't lie. Taxes in retirement are not just about rates, they're about sequences. And once you see the cascade, you can stop it before it drains your nest egg. Because here's the truth: the IRS doesn't have to change the rules to collect more from retirees. They just wait. They wait for you to follow habits that feel safe but cost you more. They wait for you to default into account order instead of designing one. They wait for the cascade. But with awareness, you can flip the script. You can decide when and how you pay, not let the system decide for you. And if this surprised you, wait until you hear about the fifth habit. It's not about taxes, not about markets, not even about fees. It's about cash flow. Many retirees follow the old paycheck mindset: monthly income in, monthly bills out. But in retirement, that rhythm can actually shrink your funds by forcing you to sell investments at the wrong time. In the next part, I'll show you how poor cash flow timing can cost more than a bear market, and how to build a system that pays you without eroding your base. If you're still here, type 1 in the comments to let me know you're following. And if you've ever been shocked by how taxes hit your Social Security or Medicare, type taxes in the comments. I want to see how many of you are living through the cascade right now. We'll keep going with part 5 next. One of the most overlooked threats to retirement wealth isn't the market, the government, or even inflation, it's timing. The timing of when you sell, when you withdraw, and when you pay your bills. Most retirees carry over the paycheck mindset they use their entire working lives. Income comes in on a set date, bills go out on set dates, and everything runs on autopilot. That routine feels safe. But in retirement, you don't have a paycheck, you have a portfolio. And when you try to force a portfolio into a paycheck rhythm, you risk selling investments at the worst possible times, locking in losses you never recover from. This is what I call the cash flow trap. It happens when retirees set up monthly withdrawals, automated just like a paycheck, regardless of what the market is doing. If the market is high, it feels fine. But when the market dips, the withdrawals keep coming. You end up selling more shares to get the same dollars. Those shares don't grow back, even when the market recovers. It's like pulling bricks out of the foundation every time there's a storm. You weaken the structure permanently. Let me tell you about John and Marlene, ages 70 and 68, from Texas. They had $600,000 in a balanced portfolio, 60% stocks, 40% bonds. Their advisor set up an automatic $3,500 monthly withdrawal to their checking account. It felt familiar, just like a paycheck. For the first year, it worked beautifully. But then the market dropped 15%. Their withdrawals didn't stop. Each month, the custodian sold more shares to raise the cash. By the time the market rebounded, John and Marlene had sold nearly $45,000 of investments at depressed prices. Their account balance was permanently lower, even though the indexes recovered. That sequence of returns risk. The first few years of retirement are the most fragile. Losses hurt more because you're withdrawing at the same time. A 15% drop when you're still working is an opportunity. You can buy more at lower prices. A 15% drop when you're retired and selling? That can cut a decade off your portfolio's lifespan. And the worst part is it feels invisible. The statements don't scream, danger. The money still shows up in your checking account each month. You only see the damage years later, when the portfolio can't support the same withdrawals. So how do you avoid the trap? By separating income from investments. That means building a cash flow buffer, a reserve that covers 12 to 24 months of living expenses, sitting safely in cash or short-term instruments. When the market is up, you refill the buffer. When the market is down, you spend from the buffer, not from your portfolio. This way, you're never forced to sell at a loss. You give your investments time to recover, and you buy yourself peace of mind. Think of it like a personal pension reserve. The cash buffer isn't about return, it's about stability. Yes, it earns less than the market, but the protection it provides is worth far more. Imagine if John and Marlene had kept $42,000, just 1 year's expenses, in cash. When the market dipped, they could have drawn from that instead of selling investments. Their account would have recovered alongside the market. That single adjustment could have preserved 6 figures over their retirement horizon. Another strategy is to align withdrawals with dividends and interest. Instead of automatically selling shares, live off the income your portfolio naturally produces. That may mean adjusting your investments toward dividend-paying stocks, bond ladders, or other income-focused vehicles. It doesn't mean chasing yield recklessly, it means structuring your portfolio so cash flow is generated organically, reducing the need for forced sales. And here's something few retirees do: flexible withdrawals. Just because you set $3,500 a month as your target doesn't mean it has to be rigid. In strong years, you can take more. In weak years, you scale back slightly, supplementing with cash reserves. That flexibility can double the longevity of your portfolio. The danger isn't spending, it's spending the same way regardless of conditions. John and Marlene learned this lesson the hard way. After we reviewed their plan, we set up a 2-year cash reserve, linked it to their checking account, and restructured their withdrawals. Instead of a rigid monthly sale, they now receive quarterly transfers funded by dividends, bond coupons, and, when markets are favorable, occasional share sales. They call it their Flex Pay system. The result? Their portfolio is steadier, their withdrawals are more efficient, and they no longer panic every time the market drops. Because here's the truth: retirement isn't a paycheck anymore. It's a flow. You're the manager of that flow. And if you let automation run without strategy, you'll bleed dollars every time the market hiccups. But if you set buffers, align income, and allow flexibility, you'll protect the very thing you worked a lifetime to build. And if the cash flow trap surprised you, the next habit will too. It doesn't come from withdrawals, it comes from deposits. Many retirees think they're helping family by gifting or lending money, but those patterns can shrink retirement funds faster than any market dip. In the next part, I'll share how helping too much can quietly derail your own security, and what boundaries protect both you and your loved ones. If you're still here, type 1 in the comments so I know you're with me. And if you've ever felt the pain of selling at the wrong time, type timing below. We'll keep going with part 6 next. One of the hardest conversations I ever have with retirees isn't about markets, fees, or taxes. It's about family. The desire to help children and grandchildren is natural. After all, you've worked hard, you want to give back, and you want to be remembered for generosity. But here's what I've seen again and again: generosity without limits quietly shrinks retirement funds faster than any bear market. Loans that are never repaid, gifts that turn into expectations, co-signed debts that become your burden, these are the silent drains that can undo decades of discipline. I call this the helping habit. It doesn't feel dangerous because it's not reckless spending on yourself. It feels noble. A down payment for a child. Covering a grandchild's tuition. Helping a son through a divorce or a daughter with medical bills. And often, the amounts seem manageable in the moment. 10,000 here, 15,000 there. But retirement wealth is about compounding in reverse. When money leaves, it never earns again. And when it leaves too often, your cushion thins to the point where your own independence is at risk. Let me share the story of Barbara and Charles, 73 and 75, from North Carolina. They had $840,000 saved when they retired. They lived modestly, spent around $4,000 a month, and should have been secure. But over the next decade, they gave their son $30,000 for a failed business, their daughter $50,000 for a divorce settlement, and regularly sent $500 a month to help with their grandchildren's activities. On paper, none of this felt extreme. But when we met, their balance had dropped below $400,000. The market had grown, but their gifts had outpaced the growth. Barbara said something I'll never forget: We thought we were investing in family. But now we feel like a burden ourselves. Here's the part many retirees don't want to hear. Your first responsibility in retirement is to protect your own stability. If you run short, you don't just hurt yourself, you risk becoming dependent on the very children you wanted to help. That's not generosity, that's a cycle of financial stress passed down. So what should you do? First, create a giving budget. Decide, in advance, what percentage of your annual income you're willing to dedicate to family support. Whether it's 2%, 5%, or 10%, make it a number that doesn't jeopardize your essential expenses. When it's spent, it's spent. This keeps generosity intentional instead of reactive. Second, distinguish between gifts and loans. A gift is money you never expect back. A loan is money you do. Too often retirees call loans loans when they're really gifts, leading to resentment and confusion later. Be clear. If it's a gift, label it as such, and never give more than your budget allows. If it's a loan, formalize it with paperwork, a repayment schedule, and accountability. This isn't about mistrust, it's about protecting family relationships by setting clear expectations. Third, never co-sign. I've seen retirees lose homes, wreck credit, and drain savings because they co-signed for children who couldn't qualify on their own. If the bank won't lend to your child without you, that's a red flag. It means they're not ready. By co-signing, you're taking on risk you can't afford in your 70s or 80s. Love your children, but don't let love blind you to math. Fourth, consider non-financial help. Your time, wisdom, and presence are often more valuable than your money. Babysitting, tutoring, sharing meals, these forms of support don't shrink your portfolio. In fact, they strengthen bonds without creating financial dependence. Barbara and Charles eventually restructured their approach. They set a $5,000 annual family fund and told their kids this was the limit. At first, it was awkward. Their children were surprised. They had assumed the bank of mom and dad would always be open. But over time, boundaries improved the relationships. Their kids became more resourceful, and Barbara and Charles regained confidence that their retirement wouldn't run out. Today, they still give, but they give within limits. And most importantly, they no longer fear becoming a burden themselves. Because here's the truth, your children have decades to rebuild their finances. You don't. Every dollar you give away at 70 has far greater opportunity cost than a dollar at 30. The margin for error shrinks as you age. And protecting your independence is the greatest gift you can give your family. If the helping habit surprised you, the next one will too. It doesn't involve family, it involves houses. Many retirees cling to homes that are too large, too costly, and too draining on cash flow, believing downsizing means giving up. In the next part, I'll show you how housing costs quietly erode retirement funds and why making a smart move can add years of stability to your plan. If you're still with me and finding value, type 1 in the comments so I know you're here. And if you've ever felt torn between helping family and protecting your own future, type family below. I'd like to hear your experience. We'll continue with Part 7 next. For many retirees, the home is more than a house. It's memories, pride, comfort, and identity. The place where children grew up, holidays were hosted, and milestones were celebrated. That emotional attachment is powerful and understandable. But here's what I've seen again and again. Clinging to a house that's too big, too expensive, or too maintenance-heavy quietly shrinks retirement funds year after year. It doesn't happen with a bang. It happens with property taxes, insurance premiums, utility bills, repairs, and deferred maintenance that eventually demands a lump sum you can't ignore. I call this the house trap. It feels like stability, but it's really slow erosion. A 3- or 4-bedroom home that made sense with kids at home becomes a financial weight in your 70s. Heating and cooling rooms you never use. Paying property taxes on square footage you don't need. Replacing roofs, furnaces, and driveways that eat up $10,000 or $15,000 at a time. All while much of your net worth is locked inside walls where it earns nothing. Take the case of Richard and Elaine, 76 and 74, from New Jersey. They lived in a colonial they bought in 1982 for $140,000. It's now worth nearly $800,000. They were proud of that. But here's the reality. Their annual property taxes were $14,000. Insurance was $2,400. Utilities ran $500 a month. Over a year, just carrying costs, not including repairs, were nearly $24,000. That's $2,000 a month, before replacing the aging roof or fixing the drafty windows. And because most of their equity was tied up in the house, they withdrew more from their IRA to cover these expenses. That triggered higher taxes and bigger RMDs. When we ran the numbers, Richard and Elaine realized the house was costing them $30,000 a year, while providing value they didn't really use. Their kids lived out of state. They only used 2 of the 5 bedrooms. The yard was more burden than joy. And yet they felt trapped, emotionally by memories, financially by the belief that downsizing meant losing. Here's the part many seniors don't see. Downsizing isn't about giving up. It's about converting idle equity into usable income and reducing recurring expenses that quietly drain your plan. By selling the big house and moving into a smaller, energy-efficient condo, Richard and Elaine cut their annual carrying costs by $14,000. That's like giving themselves a permanent raise, tax-free. On top of that, they freed $500,000 of equity, which we reinvested in a conservative income portfolio. That generated an additional $20,000 a year in cash flow. Altogether, the move improved their annual budget by $34,000. And they still had a comfortable home, one that fit their lifestyle today. Here's what you should ask yourself. Am I living in this house, or is this house living off me? If your property taxes are rising faster than your income, if you're spending weekends repairing gutters instead of enjoying life, if most of your net worth is trapped in walls you don't fully use, your house may be costing you more than it's giving you. Options exist beyond selling outright. Some retirees downsize by moving to a lower-cost area, freeing even more capital. Others explore reverse mortgages to unlock equity while staying in place, though those require careful analysis. Still others rent for flexibility, reducing maintenance stress entirely. The right choice depends on your situation, but the key is to face the math honestly. Another trap is sentimental over-renovation. I've seen retirees sink $50,000 into kitchens or landscaping for the kids when the kids visit twice a year. That money rarely returns dollar for dollar in resale and often comes from withdrawals that trigger taxes. Love your home, yes. But remember, every dollar you spend maintaining or upgrading a house that's too large is a dollar you can't use to maintain your independence. Richard and Elaine admitted, after the move, that the hardest part was emotional, not financial. But once they adjusted, they said something profound. We thought we'd miss the house. What we actually missed was freedom. Now we have it back. Because here's the truth, a home should serve you, not the other way around. In your 70s and 80s, comfort isn't square footage, it's peace of mind, manageable expenses, and the ability to enjoy your money while you can. Holding on to a house that drains you financially doesn't preserve your memories. It risks erasing your options. If the house trap surprised you, the next habit might surprise you even more. It's not about property or generosity, it's about risk. Many retirees believe they're being safe by avoiding the market entirely, parking their money in CDs or low-yield accounts. But in reality, over-conservatism can be just as dangerous as overspending. In the next part, I'll explain how playing it too safe can quietly shrink your retirement through inflation and missed growth, and how to find the balance that truly protects you. If you're still with me, type 1 in the comments so I know you're here. And if you've wrestled with the decision to downsize or stay put, type "Hows" below. I'd love to hear how you're handling it. We'll continue with Part 8 next. ChatGPT said, when most retirees think about risk, they think about the stock market. Volatility. Headlines. Recessions. They remember 2008, they remember 2000, and the pain of seeing balances fall still lingers. So many respond in the only way that feels safe. They pull out of markets entirely. They put everything into CDs, savings accounts, or fixed annuities that promise stability. On the surface, that looks responsible. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Playing it too safe can quietly shrink your retirement funds just as much as a market downturn, sometimes more, because it hands victory to inflation. I call this the safety trap. It's subtle. Your account balance doesn't go down. In fact, it may inch upward with guaranteed interest. But while you feel secure, the purchasing power of your money is silently eroding. A dollar that buys a gallon of milk today may only buy half a gallon 10 years from now. And if your portfolio never grows beyond the rate of inflation, you lose the battle in slow motion. Let me tell you about Margaret, 79, a retired school secretary from Kansas. After the 2008 crash, she swore she'd never lose money in the market again. She moved her $400,000 into CDs and savings accounts. At the time, interest rates were barely above 1%. 4 years, her balances stayed steady. Margaret felt safe. But when we met recently, she was withdrawing $3,000 a month to cover living expenses. Her CDs had earned a few thousand each year, but her expenses had climbed steadily. Groceries, utilities, healthcare, everything was more expensive. Her balance had fallen to $180,000. Margaret asked me, "How did this happen?" "I never lost money." The truth was painful. She had been losing all along, not in dollars but in purchasing power. Her safe strategy was actually riskier than she realized, because it guaranteed her money wouldn't keep up with her life. Here's what many seniors don't understand. Risk isn't just about volatility. It's about failing to meet your needs. A portfolio that never fluctuates but runs out at 85 is far riskier than one that fluctuates but lasts to 95. Safety that drains your independence isn't safety. It's a slow loss disguised as comfort. So what should you do if you're over 60 and afraid of markets? The answer isn't to gamble, but to balance. You don't need 100% in stocks to stay ahead of inflation. You do need enough growth-oriented assets, stocks, real estate, inflation-protected bonds, to keep purchasing power alive. For many retirees, that's 30 to 50% exposure, not zero. The rest can be in stable vehicles for security. Another strategy is to divide your money into buckets. Short-term, 1 to 3 years of cash and bonds for stability, medium-term, 5 to 7 years in balanced investments, and long-term, growth assets you won't touch for a decade. This way, you never have to sell growth assets in a downturn to cover near-term expenses, but you also never let your entire nest egg wither in low-yield accounts. And here's a mindset shift. Volatility is not the enemy. Volatility is the price of growth. Over time, markets trend upward despite setbacks. If you let fear push you entirely into fixed returns, you sacrifice that long-term trend. In a 20-year retirement, that sacrifice compounds into a major shortfall. Margaret eventually agreed to rebalance. We left 2 years of expenses in high-yield savings and short-term bonds for stability. We put another portion into dividend-paying stocks and balanced funds to create natural income. The rest went into a broad market index fund for long-term growth. Within 2 years, her withdrawals were partly funded by dividends instead of principal, and her balance began to stabilize. She told me, "I feel nervous about markets, but I feel terrified about running out. This way, I can live." Because here's the truth, avoiding risk entirely is itself a risk. Inflation is undefeated. Every retiree faces it, and the only way to fight it is with growth. That doesn't mean gambling or chasing hot stocks. It means accepting some exposure, in a measured, planned way, to keep your dollars alive. If the safety trap surprised you, the 9th and final habit may shock you even more. It's not about investments, debt, or housing. It's about health. Too many retirees underestimate how unplanned medical costs can drain wealth overnight. In the final part, I'll show you how ignoring healthcare planning can undo everything you've built, and how to protect your money and independence with foresight, not fear. If you're still here, type 1 in the comments so I know you're with me. And if you've ever avoided investing because it felt safer, type safety below. I'd love to hear your story. We'll wrap this series with part 9 next. There's one more habit that can shrink retirement funds faster than any fee, tax, or market dip, and it's the one few people want to talk about: ignoring healthcare costs. I've sat with retirees who meticulously tracked every dividend, rebalanced their accounts, and built cash buffers, but never planned for medical expenses. Then one diagnosis, one fall, one prescription change unraveled everything. Health is the wild card in retirement finance, and pretending it won't affect you is the most expensive habit of all. I call this the health blind spot. It happens when retirees assume Medicare covers everything, or that savings will stretch as long as they're careful. But Medicare doesn't cover long-term care, most dental work, or many out-of-pocket drugs. Deductibles, co-pays, premiums, and uncovered services can easily add up to $8,000 to $12,000 a year for a couple. And that's before a major illness or nursing need. The average cost of assisted living runs $4,500 a month. A private nursing home can exceed $9,000 a month. Without a plan, those bills can burn through a nest egg in a few short years. Take the case of George and Linda, 72 and 70, from Minnesota. They had saved $680,000, lived modestly, and thought they were set. But when George was diagnosed with Parkinson's, their expenses doubled. Medications, therapies, and eventually in-home assistance began draining $5,000 a month beyond their normal budget. Within 5 years, their balance had dropped below $200,000. Linda looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "We planned for retirement. We didn't plan for this." Here's the part most retirees don't realize. Medical costs are not just a health issue, they're a financial inevitability. Fidelity estimates the average couple retiring today will need nearly $300,000 just for health care over their lifetime, not including long-term care. Pretending it won't happen doesn't make it go away. It just ensures you'll pay for it in crisis instead of with preparation. So what should you do if you're over 60? First, build a dedicated health care budget. Don't lump medical costs in with miscellaneous. If your Medicare premiums, supplemental insurance, prescriptions, and expected out-of-pocket add up to $900 a month, label it clearly. That way you see the true baseline of your retirement, not a false low number. Second, consider supplemental coverage wisely. A Medigap plan or Medicare Advantage with the right network can save thousands, but the cheapest premium isn't always the cheapest total cost. Run the math across several years, not just one. Think about your doctors, your prescriptions, and your likely needs. Third, plan for long-term care. Not everyone will need it, but many will. That can mean traditional long-term care insurance, hybrid life/long-term care policies, or setting aside a dedicated investment account as a care reserve. The key is to face the possibility now, not when the crisis comes. A $300,000 care reserve set aside at 65, growing conservatively, can preserve your dignity and independence at 80. Fourth, protect liquidity. Healthcare expenses often come in lumpy bills. $7,000 for dental implants, $12,000 for hearing aids, $18,000 for a knee replacement. If all your money is tied up in illiquid assets or accounts that trigger taxes with every withdrawal, those lump sums can become wealth killers. Keeping a portion of assets in accessible, tax-efficient vehicles gives you breathing room. George and Linda eventually restructured. Linda sold their second car, downsized to a smaller home, and freed equity that became a care fund. We helped her secure a home care policy that covered a portion of George's needs, reducing out-of-pocket burn. It didn't erase the challenge, but it stopped the freefall. Linda told me later, "The money is tighter than I hoped, but at least I can sleep knowing I won't lose everything." Because here's the truth. You can plan for markets, fees, and taxes with spreadsheets. Health requires humility. You don't know what diagnosis will come, but you do know something will. Planning is not about fear, it's about preserving choice. Choice to stay in your home, choice to hire help, choice to get treatment without bankrupting yourself. The retirees who thrive financially are not the ones who avoid illness, they're the ones who prepare for it. And that's the larger lesson of all 9 habits we've covered. Retirement wealth doesn't usually vanish in one dramatic event. It erodes quietly, habit by habit, dollar by dollar, until one day you realize the cushion you thought you had is gone. Idle cash. Minimum payments. High fees. Tax cascades. Cash flow traps. Overgifting. House burdens. Safety traps. Health blind spots. Each alone can seem small. Together, they can cut a retirement short. But the good news is just as powerful. Awareness reverses the erosion. By adjusting habits, tiering cash, paying down debts, cutting fees, sequencing withdrawals, building buffers, setting boundaries, right-sizing homes, balancing growth, and preparing for health, you can add years of security and freedom to your plan. You don't need to predict the market. You just need to stop the leaks. So here's my challenge. Pick one habit from these 9 and act on it this month. Move idle cash. Review your fees. Map your withdrawal plan. Downsize what's draining you. Call your doctor and price coverage options. One small step compounds. Just like erosion compounds, so does protection. If you've made it this far, type 1 in the comments so I know you're committed. And share which of the 9 habits you're going to tackle first. Your answer might inspire someone else reading. Because retirement is not about surviving, it's about living. And every choice you make today is a vote for the kind of life you'll enjoy tomorrow. Don't let quiet habits steal the life you worked so hard to build. Stay aware, stay intentional, and keep your wealth working for you, not against you.